Electrocast.
There's a change happening in the way we live, the way we work, the way we spend our money and make our decisions. We are evolving to be more conscious in our actions in a way that serves the world and makes it a better place. Welcome to the Ethical Evolution. The Ethical Evolution podcast is brought to you by Ethical Change Agency. I'm Bindi, I'm the founder, and my mission is to help ethical entrepreneurs and holistic healers to find their voice through spiritual coaching and podcasting. I'm honoured to bring you the stories of those who create change through healing, kindness, innovation, purpose, and spirit. Understanding that to create collective change, we need to be the change. It all begins with us. Parrish Collins is a civil rights attorney based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. After taking what he envisioned being a few prison medical neglect cases, he realised he'd opened Pandora's box to a shocking volume of medical atrocities in New Mexico jails and prisons. Parrish discovered a handful of massive, sometimes billion-dollar corporations revolving in and out of New Mexico prisons and jails with no oversight by the state or the counties that contracted them. The result has been deaths that could have been avoided, inmates and guards receiving horrific treatment, a disaster waiting to happen. Stories like this need to come out of the dark and into the light so that lives and systems are changed for good. So join me in sharing Parrish's work to be part of that change. Welcome, Parrish, to the Ethical Evolution.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, for those people who don't know who you are and what you do, can you go ahead and tell us?
Well, I guess probably the reason I'm here is because I'm a civil rights attorney in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And for the past 5 years, I've been filing quite a few prison medical neglect cases that arise to the level of civil rights violations. And since that time, since the first one we filed in, I believe, February of 2018, we filed 60 more. We have quite a few more we're going to file, and it's all in New Mexico. And so, and it started, just briefly, I can tell you how I got into this. Jeff Sessions, you're in Australia, so I don't know if you know who Jeff Sessions is, but he was appointed the U.S. Attorney, the Attorney General, and he wasn't particularly friendly to civil rights. And so I thought I should probably do a little bit of civil rights work, and I saw, prison medical issues as somewhere where I could make a contribution. But I had no idea what I was going to find. I expected maybe I'd follow, 1, 2, 3. I had no idea it would turn into 60. And my plan is to file a lot more, but, start filing them around the country as well. And the reason being is it's a small group of corporate, very large corporations that provide private prison, they provide private services for the provision of medical services in prisons and jails all around the country. And it's a small handful. And if you just kind of a cursory view of the news, you can see that the medical, there simply is not really medical care in prisons and jails. And that's a huge problem. And I tell people, because when I first went into it, I had perceptions or ideals about what prison was like, and like a lot of people, I didn't really know I didn't know any prisoners, frankly, and so I had kind of a ideal of what they would be like. It's been nothing like that, and then you see shows and you read when you're growing up. Kind of the thing you fear most about prison is the inmates and maybe the guards, depending on what shows you're watching. But I can tell you, based upon what I found, or what we found, is the most dangerous part of prison is the medical care and the food. And that's what I'm trying to change.
That's incredible. And, things are vastly different here in Australia, and I bet they're different in different parts of the US as well. But there's people dying because they're not getting adequate care, or people are just not listening when they need help, right?
Absolutely.
So
And
can you give us some examples of that?
Well, we have one case now that's getting, quite a bit of attention. One case is worse than the last. You think you've seen it all, and then you get another case, and you can't help but think, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. And I will tell you, it's kind of, it's not interesting, it's sad. I had some young legal assistants that were planning on going to law school, and, so they had gotten out of college and were working with us because they wanted to be civil rights attorneys. And two of them left recently because of the secondary trauma, just from what they're seeing because of the horror stories. And one of the ones I followed recently is interesting on a number of fronts, but just the level of callousness of both the officers as well as the medical providers. And she was a 40 something, early 40s woman. She had drug issues, and which most, a lot of the inmates and prisoners do have drug issues and mental health issues. And she went in for trace amounts of opiates. Her case actually got dismissed the day before she died, but they put her in the detox pod. And during the night, there are witnesses saying that for basically 24 hours leading up to her death, she's having seizures. She can't walk. She can't get to the water fountain. One of the biggest dangers of detox is dehydration. And she can't get to the water fountain. They're not providing her water, and they're not really, encouraging the inmates to help her either. And, I can get to that later. But basically, it's interesting. There were two highly decorated combat medics that fought in Fallujah, that were in Fallujah, which was some of the worst fighting in the Iraq war. And they were there. One of them shouldn't have been in detox. The other one probably needed to be in detox, but the other one was I can't go into it because it's health issues, but she should have never been in detox. But the way they pod, which is like a giant square room, and then on the, two of the walls there, upstairs, downstairs cells. And then there's a big common area. It looks like a gymnasium a little bit. And then what they do is lay down mats on the floor, in rows and columns, basically. And so all the women around her, there were 8 women around her mat, 2 of which were combat medics. And they all know she's dying. And they're begging for help. By the end, according to witnesses, the whole pod, all the women in the pod are yelling, call medical, call medical. And the guard wouldn't call medical. And by the time the medical did show up, it was too late. And then there were some, according to the witnesses, the medical was pretty bad as well. And these female inmates reported very consistently, and it's not like I can get them all in a room together to talk to them. When I go talk to them in a jail, I'm talking to them. They may not even be in the same part of the jail. So, and they all had very consistent stories, and they said that the guards and the medical people, which is pretty shocking, when they would start their rounds in the pod, they would yell "hoe check," and they referred to the women as hoes, and a lot of worse names, and just totally dehumanizing and degrading, deliberately cruel. And my client died. And then naturally, the $1 billion corporation that was providing medical services has now filed bankruptcy. Nationwide, they set up a new company. It's owned by a private equity firm, and they created a new company, and now they're trying to bankrupt out all the lawsuits around the country. One, I have another, and this was very emotional for our staff. this young woman was trying to call us for a while. We were trying to get a call set up with her at the prison for about a week, and we never could get the call set up. And then the family, and I don't know how they got our name, if she had given it to them or what, but they ended up calling us and she died. And she was she had severe mental illness. She was in a county jail that sent her to the Department of Corrections it's called safekeeping, to provide mental health services and basically protect her from suicide, because she had tried to commit suicide 3 times the first weekend at that jail. And so naturally they send her to the Department of Corrections. She doesn't get any mental health services. They put her in a cell by herself. Not only do they don't watch her or provide medical, or mental health services for her, they give her, those mesh laundry bags with the cording to tighten them up. They gave her 2 of those.
Oh, no.
So they basically gave her the instrument of suicide, and she killed herself. And so those are just 2 recent, but, every one of them is pretty horrifying. We have a lot of infection cases that, and I mean, this would be a very long conversation if I explain why this happens, but these infections, which are easily treatable with antibiotics and proper diagnostics and so forth, what happens is they end up getting out of control. They get into our clients' spines, their hearts. One we have it got into his brain, and others are diabetics and end up with osteopathic, or osteomyelitis in their extremities and end up having amputations. But and then they end up in the hospital for weeks or months, or far too many of them have died. So a lot of our cases involve infections or suicide cases. And then we have the local jail, we have several detox death cases. And so it's, and when you said it's different around the U.S., maybe, it's not. It's bad everywhere. It's, anywhere these corporations are operating, it's bad. And unfortunately, they're operating in every state. A few states like California and Texas have gone to their university health systems. But I think the healthcare will improve immensely. The local jail recently, fired the company that's going bankrupt or filed for bankruptcy. And now the University of New Mexico Hospital is taking over. And I've actually heard from one of those combat medics that watched my client April die, and I check on her pretty regularly to see how she's doing, because she has pretty bad PTSD from the war and drug issues and so forth. I talked to her, and she was really happy because she had finally seen a doctor, and I've been trying to get her to see a doctor for a while and sent letters and nothing, and she said, oh, they were really nice, they were young and new. And I said, oh, well, do you know if they worked at UNM? And she said, yeah. She said, they're so nice. They've set me up with follow-up appointments. And the university hasn't even officially taken over the contract. The official date is in June, but already the people that I talked to, the inmates I talked to, this is very small sample size of one, but still, I'm encouraged that the medical care is going to improve. And my goal is to have UNM or at least a reputable hospital take over medical care in the Department of Corrections here.
So, I mean, what kind of accountability is there in these situations, Parrish? Like you said that particular company's gone bankrupt, which basically means, there's no real suit against them. But I mean, does the Department of Corrections have some kind of accountability here as well?
Well, in that case, it's with the county. It's the county, Albuquerque's in Bernalillo County, and it's Bernalillo County that hired this contractor. Yeah, and they have...
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right. New music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
Sadly for Bernalillo County and the taxpayers here, if that bankruptcy is successful, and it might not be, it should get tossed out. And the county really should be in Texas fighting the bankruptcy. I don't know if they are or not. I haven't seen any indication that they are, but they're responsible for their contractors. So if the corporation successfully files bankruptcy, then the county's going to have a very large problem on their hands. And we're not the only ones with suits ongoing against this jail. We have 5, but there's others that are ongoing too. And it's going to be an expensive lesson for the county, but they knew it. This company had been thrown out of the Department of Corrections in 2016 for some pretty atrocious conduct and medical neglect, in addition to some other pretty outrageous things. And so that was in 2016. And then they bring them back in. They bring them into the county jail in 2019. And that's just here in New Mexico, where they knew this company's record, but the company does not have a good record nationally. And it takes about 2 minutes to figure that out. And the county, in my estimation, was grossly negligent or reckless and even entering into a contract with this company. So the county, it's going to be expensive for the county. Even if they're not successful, it's still expensive for the county because of what, they've had 21 deaths since April of 2020, I think.
That's incredible.
At that one jail. And so they have a record of abuse of inmates as they say, the chickens come home to roost, and that's what's about to happen.
That's incredible. And, Parrish, we're talking basic human rights here. Just simple things like water and basic medical treatment. I mean, you've probably seen some atrocious things and heard about some atrocious things that happen in these jails. How do you keep doing it?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, it's funny. I have never liked being a lawyer. I graduated law school in '89, and I left practicing law several times. And I'll never be a lawyer again. And then, anyway, I ended up being a lawyer again, probably for lack of other talents. But and then I started doing this in 2017, right after the inauguration and the appointment of Jeff Sessions. And I love what I'm doing. I wouldn't do anything else. And I think you stay motivated because you really have what I consider some pretty, horrendous actors on the other side. So there is no lack of motivation. And I will tell you that very few lawyers will even take a call from an inmate. So, and fewer still will take a case. And they're not easy. They take, I think on average from the time they call us or the family calls us, it's probably 4 years, minimum, sometimes more. We have one now that's probably going to end up, it's gone to the Court of Appeals, the Federal Court of Appeals now, and it's already ongoing 5 years. And, so this round trip from the Court of Appeals will probably be at least a year and a half. If we lose, then it's over. If we win, then it goes back to federal court, and then, it's probably another year and a half from there. So it'll probably be 7-8 years before that one's over. And so, it's not, well, there's a lot of, legal work that's difficult and takes a long time, but, I don't know. I just really like the work. I like my clients a lot, and you learn a lot about them. There's a lot of misperceptions about them, but they're usually just people, that made mistakes, a lot of drugs and mental illness. Almost all of them have mental illness of one kind or another. A lot of them have learning disabilities that were never taken care of. They weren't treated they weren't taken care of in school. High rate, over 50% dyslexia, really high illiteracy rates. So it's sad because they're just people, and I can see myself or friends that I grew up with in them, and they never had a chance from the beginning, and a lot of them are from families with generational incarceration and poverty, and then guards and medical people that are actually want to do the right thing, basically whistleblower types. And so I plan on helping some of them because they're in kind of they're in the same boat basically. Mm-hmm. And I try to tell the lawyers on the other side, if you have a sick, malnourished inmate that's locked in his or her cell 23 hours a day, and sometimes 24 hours a day, and that's usually the case on the weekends because of lack of staffing, then you have some pretty irritated inmates, and there's going to be things that happen because of that. And the same goes with the guards. They're underpaid. It is so understaffed. It's dangerous for them and for the inmates and for the communities around the prisons. And so they're scared to death because of the understaffing. They're working 16-hour shifts several times a week, and they don't get mental health services or anything else. And so it really is a time bomb. And it's interesting because the guards are, they're just got, people too. They happen to live in communities that don't have a lot of job opportunities. And maybe the prison that, in a lot of the communities, the prison is the primary employer. And so they take these jobs and they, and their lives are at risk. And it doesn't have to be that way. There are some inmates that are dangerous, but I've only met a few of them. I've only met a few of them where you're thinking, oh my God, this guy, he needs to stay locked up. And I would be nervous around him. But most of them, they're just trying to do their time. There's no programming, very little education, no job skills training, no reentry services, getting them ready to get back out. It's basically, and in the case of my clients, they have permanent spine damage, permanent heart damage, missing extremities, and they don't prepare them to get out. Most of the time, they don't even qualify them for Medicaid, which they're legally obligated to do. And it's basically, good luck, see you soon, come back soon, basically, which is, I think that's the model. You want to keep them coming back because that's where the money is. And anyway, you can tell I'm a little bit cynical about the prison system. So
I can understand why. I can definitely understand why. And you would definitely see in the work that you do that, many inmates are just misunderstood and are not being given the opportunity to rehabilitate. It's just a revolving door for some of them, and generationally. How do we solve this problem, Parrish? Like, it sounds like funding is a big issue, perhaps, in actually getting, staff in there, getting the right resources in there, and making sure that, the whole management of the system is actually better resourced.
Right. Well, it's not necessarily the funding, it's the way the funding's used. The Department of Corrections here, I think it's the third, I'm pretty sure, unless I'm reading the state budget wrong, I think it's the third largest budget in the state for any of the agencies. That's a lot of money. And the Department of Corrections, the base contract's about $75 million per year for the medical contractor. The food contractor, gets a very large contract as well. The food it's barely it's barely edible. It's all and if you're not a diabetic going into prison, if you're there for any significant amount of time, you're going to be a diabetic coming out. And if you have diabetes while you're in there, then your life is in jeopardy because they're feeding you pretty much all carbs, 3 meals a day. And you got between the food and the medical, that's well over 100 million a year, and they're not doing their jobs. And so that's just here. One of the contractors that we've sued the most here has it's 1.3 billion, I think, or 1.4 billion contract in Missouri. In Missouri, 1.3 or 1.4 billion dollar contract there. That's a lot of money, and that could be going to other things like programming, reentry, job training, decent food, all the things necessary to get these people on their feet rather than heaping harm upon harm, because most of them have grown up in traumatic environments. I think I've seen statistics, but I think it's well over 50% of the women have been sexually abused, like well over 50% while they were young, and the men have suffered similar abuse, maybe not sex abuse, but violence and all the other things that you can expect in some of the neighborhoods and some of the families they're in. And so you're taking severely traumatized people and then treating them worse than we treat animals. And if you treated animals in New Mexico, even if you treated your pet the way they're treated, you could very well be facing criminal charges. So, and for whatever reason, with prisoners, everyone just kind of shrugs their shoulders and doesn't take much note of it. So one of the things I'm really working on, the kind of the approach I'm taking, is what it's costing taxpayers. And the contracts are kind of the tip of the iceberg, because in New Mexico, and I have to assume it's the same everywhere, and the contract actually says if an inmate is sent out for outpatient therapy, diagnostics, dialysis, whatever it happens to be, the medical contractor pays. If that inmate goes into the hospital for 24 hours, Medicaid picks up the whole bill, and that's a lot of money just on our clients alone. Months and months and months of hospitalizations for our clients, and then what's never been factored in, and no one in New Mexico has ever studied what that's costing Medicaid, but the other end of it is, just our little firm, and it's basically just me and some staff, and my wife is my law partner, but she doesn't do this kind of work. So, and then I co-counsel with a few little firms around town, but, we've had, over 40 of these infection cases, and most of these guys are young. And so they get out of prison, they're going to need lifetime medical care, because spines and hearts don't get better with age. I think we all know that. So they're going to have a lifetime of Medicaid. Most of them were in manual labor before they went to prison. But, even if you're a rocket scientist, you go to prison, you're probably a manual laborer when you get out, because it's not easy to get a job after being in prison. And you can't do manual labor with a damaged spine or a damaged heart. And so the taxpayers are getting hammered every which way. And so that's kind of the approach I'm taking, is to try to convey to taxpayers, it's not just a human interest story. It's your money. And people take notes then. They're like, oh, wow. So, and you can tell the human interest stories, and it'll, ping your heart a little bit, but people forget about it. Like they see something that's horrible happen in the prison, like, and then they move on. But if it's coming out of their checks, they're not going to move on, because it's going to come out of their check this week, next week, the following week, and every week, because these guys will live for another 30, 40 years, and this has all been piling up since the private contractors went in and took over medical in the 90s. So this is just accruing over time, and God knows how many billions it's costing the state of New Mexico. And then if you, take that nationwide, it's probably a pretty large number. And I, for the life of me, I don't know why, but no one's studied it. And that's one of my goals, is for someone to actually calculate the cost to taxpayers, because the contracts are, like I said, the tip of the iceberg.
Wow, that's going to be a massive calculation, Parrish. And I hope you reach the right person who has the purse strings to actually do those maths and make a change, because that is incredible.
Yeah, well, I can't add or subtract. That's why I went to law school. So,
and one of the things you mentioned there is, like these prisoners, it's and the atrocities that happen in prison, it's out of sight, out of mind for most people. It's like, it's not happening to me or anyone I know, so I really don't care. Or, you'll see it on the news in passing. It's like, we just don't care anymore. But if it was someone from our family, someone we loved, someone we knew, like, could we just put ourselves in their shoes for a minute and go, that's a human being. That's really, we need to do something about this.
Yeah, and if you met them, you would see them as human beings. They're polite. I had one client that I went to see him, and the prisons never tell him I'm coming. They say it's security, but I think it's because they don't bring their legal file to the meeting. But one of them I went, he had been in for a little while, and I get to him, they bring him in, and, shackles and whatever. And he sits down and he says, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Parrish Collins. We've been talking. I'm your attorney." And he burst into tears. And he said, "You're the first person to come visit me in prison." And but I will tell you, getting to the hitting home, like two of the witnesses to April's death, the detox death, one of them I filed a lawsuit last week for what she suffered witnessing that death, and she was a nurse. She worked in ORs for 12 years. She's an amazing person. She should have never been in jail to begin with, but she certainly shouldn't have been in that pod. Another young woman who witnessed it, she went in on she had failed to pay a traffic fine, and she got arrested on a warrant, and then she got, it got dismissed, and she got out the next day. But she was a young woman. She actually knew my children. They're the same age, and or my sons who are older, and then my niece, and just a nice kid. But she was so upset that she got out and immediately started searching for the family, because she knew the jail was going to try to cover it up. She was smart enough to know that, and she tracked down the family, and then they ended up calling me. But it's interesting, because they would have covered it up. They would have told the family, "Oh, she died of an overdose," or some nonsense, and the family might have accepted that. They might have said, "Well, she had some drug issues, that's probably what happened." But that's not what happened. And so I filed a lawsuit for the nurse, and I'm also going to be filing a lawsuit for her. And the reason I'm saying this is because you're talking about it hitting home. These are people that shouldn't have been in jail.
Exactly.
But it could have been, I was talking to some ER docs the other night, because I'm trying to get some of them on board from local hospitals that see what's happening with these people coming in. But I was talking to them, and they said, it's really surprising, the people that come in DWIs into the hospital, it's a lot of times they're older, 50 plus, 60, 70. They said it's basically grandmas coming in for DWIs. Those grandmas end up in the detox. And so, say your sweet little grandma had a couple of, glasses of wine, gets arrested, gets thrown in the detox, and then has to watch someone die over 24 hours after being constantly abused and basically humiliated the entire time. That's gonna stay with grandma for a long time. And this young woman, she cries every time I talk to her. It's going to stick with her for her entire life. And she's 30 years old. and she will never forget this. So it does hit home, and it could be anyone. It could be someone's kid, just, sibling, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever. It could very easily hit home where someone ends up in this detox situation, and maybe they don't die of detox, but they have to watch someone else die, and that's pretty awful. And so, I plan to make it an issue, and that's why we filed the suit.
Oh, I'm so glad that they've got you, Parrish, because it can be so simple that people could end up in that situation unintentionally, and that could happen to anyone. Like you say, it's just, and, people probably thinking through this entire conversation, yeah, but how did they get into jail? And it's, it's like it can happen so simply. Circumstances can just get out of hand, and it just can happen so simply, as you've explained. Now, Parrish, if people are listening and they want to get in touch with you and find out more about your work and what you do, where can they go?
Well, we have a website. It's kind of a little bit under construction, but it's been up for a long time. I have most of my students. There's probably 10 or 12 that aren't listed there, but they're on the website, and they can contact me that way. And, one thing I am working on, it's kind of more or less, it's launched, but it's not quite official, but a nonprofit basically to bring more of these lawsuits around the country. So, and I'll have news about that later, but the website is, it's pretty easy. It's just, collinsattorneys.com. And then we have a page dedicated to, we have a lot on the prison stuff, and unfortunately I'm so busy doing the prison work that I don't really have time to maintain the website or add new content. But I think we have, 45, 50 suits list, there with links to the lawsuits that were filed. And I just need to find time to add the others. And that's, so you can learn a lot reading the complaints, like what's going on, because you can see in the lawsuit, how these people were treated. And it's pretty shocking. And I say pretty shocking, and I guess it's more than pretty shocking. It's unacceptable. And
yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm gonna keep working on it, do what I can, and hopefully get some more people involved along the way, which is the goal of the nonprofit, is to provide the foundation and the support so other lawyers around the country can take just one case, and we'll get them through the learning curve. We'll provide support and all the things necessary for them to be successful, because it is a huge learning curve. And we've made some mistakes and wasted a lot of time and money along the way, but I think and that'll still happen. It's inevitable. You're going to make some mistakes or go down the wrong path here and there, but we feel like, we kind of have the map now, and I want to show other lawyers, and, just take one case. And if a lot of lawyers do that, we could literally change the system. Because I feel like, we're making some headway in New Mexico, and, it's just me. And like I said, a couple of staff, if you had a bunch of lawyers around the country, I mean, they start paying attention when they have to start writing checks, and until then, they're going to keep doing what they're doing.
And I love the concept of the nonprofit. Excellent idea. And if, as you say, if just these lawyers can join you and just take one case and share that load and also learn from it, that's exactly how we get that collective change. So I'm going to spread the word for you as far as I can.
Cool.
But if we can connect you with anyone, please let us know. But we wish you all the best in that, and hope that it comes to life much sooner rather than later. Now, I've got the last big question for you, Parrish, and I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is going to be. What's the change you'd like to see in the world, and how can we bring it to life?
Well, there are so many changes I like to see in the world, less cruelty, and so forth, just basic decency. But in the context of the prisons, which is kind of where I'm focused, because that's somewhere where I can actually make a little difference. And just see these, both the guards and the inmates treated humanely, and be provided with resources so they can be healthy, happy, and a healthy, happy guard makes a healthy, happy inmate. A healthy, happy inmate makes a healthy, happy guard. And right now, everyone's suffering, and it has to stop, because, I'm really concerned. New Mexico had one of the worst prison riots in U.S. history, if not the worst, in 1980. And the conditions now, I'm worried, and there's guards that are worried, and nothing's changed. I read the book called Blood in the Water. I don't know if you read that. It's about the 1971 Attica prison riot, which was pretty horrible. It was the worst riot of all time at that point. I think the New Mexico riot by some is considered worse, but the first several chapters were talking about the conditions that existed leading up to the riot. They're all present now in New Mexico and most every other prison system in the U.S. And it's just a disaster waiting to happen. And when it happens, people don't. And unfortunately, people care as much about guards as they do inmates. They're out of sight, out of mind, like you said. But they're people, and they deserve to be treated with decency and respect, and their lives should not be on the line every day, and they shouldn't be. Yeah, I'm just kind of blathering now, but I don't know. I'd like to see the lives of the people in the prison systems, whoever they happen to be within the prison and jail systems around the U.S., treated better, no matter what side of the bars they're on.
Yes. Well, if anybody's going to help make that change, it's going to be you, Parrish, and we're behind you 100%. And thank you so much for your time today and being a part of the Ethical Evolution.
Well, thanks for having me. This was great. It's nice meeting you, and hopefully we'll meet again someday.
Thanks for listening to the Ethical Evolution podcast. If you're ready to be the change and would love to work with me on finding your voice through spiritual coaching or creating your own podcast with impact, visit ethicalchangeagency.com.
Welcome to the Reverie channel, where entertainment knows no bounds. Live concerts, on-demand music, documentaries, and short films, all in stunning HD. Now on Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Immerse yourself from home. And on Android and iOS for those on the move. Support creators with crowdfunding donations. Fuel their creativity. Join us in shaping entertainment's future. The Reverie channel, where every view, every donation matters.
If you're a working professional wondering what's next for your career, you've come to the right place. Whether you're looking for a promotion, growth, or a potential career transition, look no further. With over 30 years working in a variety of industries, I share my insider knowledge with those ready to get ahead on Career Advancement with Craig Ansell. Tune in to get your strategies for success.
Electricast.